Today we're going to go through session 5. It's advanced templates. We're going to focus on the temporal parameters for gate stuff. Excuse me. We're going to also talk about automated text, how you can use different temporal parameters in templates so that as you use these templates in the future, it's just going to be automatically populated for you. We'll talk about creating average templates if you have, say, a normative database that you're working with, how to create those averages. We're also going to talk about creating a running average, how to build on those as you're starting to collect that data. And say if you want a control group versus your individual participants, how you create that running average. We're going to discuss how to build that in. We're also going to talk a little bit briefly about the presentation mode, how you can run Polygon as a set of slides rather than just a report to be read. And we're going to discuss the advanced graphs, how you can graph EMG data. So the temporal parameters that we're going to talk about today, these temporal parameters are built in with the plugin gate marker set. And so inside of Nexus, you can run the generate gate cycle parameters pipeline. And that's actually going to generate these parameters. That way, when you come into Polygon, you can graph them. So any of them will be available in a trial that's had that run under the analysis tab. So as you expand it, you'll see your subject, and then there will be that analysis tree that's going to have those spatial and temporal gate parameters listed. Once you click on that, it's going to go ahead and list them at the bottom, just like everything else does. And then if you double click on any title of a parameter, it'll go ahead and open it up and add that into the text pane for you. So parameters without left and right context, such as just a general cadence, will be just written as a number. However, if it's, say, a left cadence or a left step time, those are all going to be written in left and right context, so they're going to populate with those column headers like seen in this picture. As you add a bunch of them in, if you double click them individually, each one is going to add its own header, so it's pretty easy to just go through and delete the redundant headers to make your table look a little bit cleaner like this. Your other option there is to actually insert them as a table. And so to do that, you can go through and control select any of the parameters that you like in any order. And then just right click on any of them and say insert table, and it'll generate it as seen in this photo without the extra lines and just with the single headers on each one. So if we switch over to Polygon to see that, here I've just opened up a general report. Let me bring my data manager back. And then I've added 5 trials into it, walking gate trials. And so as I open these up, like I can look at walking 2, and it's got the analysis tab because it's been processed. And let's expand so you guys can see these. There we go. So you can see it's got like cadence, which, let me go down a little bit and get out of the way. If you just double click on cadence, the cadence would be 100 steps per minute. Again, those are things that you can change how they're reported for the units. If it's something like left cadence and right cadence, and you double click on it, it's going to go that. Mine, because I've adjusted my text, keeps setting my headers off, and so I do apologize that you guys will see that throughout today. But cadence, so it's got a left and a right. If I wanted to look at, say, step length, again, it's going to add that in there. And I should not have been sitting in the middle of my other one, so let me back up real quick. Let's go down and then go with step length. So you can add those in individually. Again, if you'd like to take out the redundant headers, you can just delete them like with a word processor. Or you can go in and create a table. So if I come down a little ways, and I want, let's say, single support, step length, step parameters, and stride parameters, and walking speed. Then I can right click and say insert table. It's going to build it in. Again, my headers are messed up. but it's going to create them. It does go ahead and add in units for you just in case. If you want to add in multiple trials, then it's always a good idea to go ahead and give these a list. This one is walking 2. If I wanted to add in walking 3, I could. And then that could be a separate table. You can just build those as you go. So do we have any questions over this stuff so far?
Is the gate cycle pipeline something that's already in Nexus, or is that something we need to create?
Nope, it's already in Nexus. If you're using the plugin gate marker set, it's actually in, I believe it's in the dynamic plugin gate pipeline that's built. Otherwise, it's under workstation operations, and it's just generate gate cycle parameters. And as long as you have your events put in, if you're using a custom marker set and you've put in say 1 foot contact and 1 foot off, then it'll go ahead and generate those based off of that gate cycle.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. All right. You can also do automated text the same way. The good thing about this automated text is you can use this as a placeholder, and then once you go in and open up a template, you can just add in your files and it'll automatically populate those measures that you're interested in. So it can be very time-saving in that aspect. But how to do that, you'll go in and add temporal parameters into your report, just like we did. You want to save your report as a template, and you want to make sure that whichever trial you inserted those parameters from is listed as a placeholder. So for instance, we did walking 2, so we'll make sure to list walking 2 as one of our placeholder files. Then you'll want to open a new report based on that template, and then add in your placeholder files. And when you first open that report, you'll see it'll look just like this down here at the bottom, where it's just empty spots. And those are waiting for those placeholders to be populated. And then as soon as you add that file, you'll notice that it'll go ahead and generate that for you. So how that's going to look in Polygon, I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this stuff since it's redundant. So I've got these. I'm going to save my report. Yep. And then I can go ahead and save this as a template. We're going to call it automated text and then save it there. We want to make sure that at least walking 2 is a placeholder, but we'll go ahead and make the first 3 placeholders. And then say OK. So then if we close this one and go and create a new there we go. Yes, we want to base it off the template that we just created, the automated text template. So if I get out of the way, you guys can see that now it's just placeholders. It's waiting for those files to be populated. So let's go with 1. Four, and now 5. Okay. Okay. Oh, and I do apologize. I should have saved those links. So I'm going to close this real quick. Sorry, guys. Okay. All right. Oh. Okay. And mine just popped up on the other screen, so hang on here. There we go. So then it went ahead and repopulated it. Get my extras out of the way. Okay. So going on from the automated text, our next thing that we wanted to talk about was creating average templates. So this is kind of, for those of you that were there last week, a brief refresher, and then we're going to build on to what Felix talked about last week. So the average template is going to be an average of any files that you already have loaded. And so if I have, like in this image, walking 1 through 5, I can create an average to average all of those trials, giving me a more robust data set. And so how you do that is you have to have a report with at least one trial in it, and then you're going to add in or create a new average data node, which we learned about last time, but we'll go over again. And then we're going to make a comparison between the average data and the trial, save that as a report, and then once we go ahead and open that back up, it'll be waiting for us. The only catch is you want to make sure that if you've got the average data set that you're interested in comparing to, you want to make sure that it's not a placeholder. That way it doesn't get replaced with any other files. Once you create that new report based on the template that you just created, your graphs should populate with the average data since that was not a placeholder, and will have no trial data associated with it until you add in those trials. The data bar will have the same average data node, and you can go back and double check that it's got the same files listed that you're interested in. But then all of your placeholders are going to be your trial comparisons. So from your data manager, you'll go through and select the different trials that you want to add into those placeholder files. And then as you click on your links, all those graphs that you had created should now have that new data. So what this looks like, okay, let me get out of that one. And we're going to go back to my original. Perfect. So I've got walking 2, 4, 6, and 8. So in the data tab, that's where you can say all trial average. We'll create an average data node. And then if I want to add all of them into my average data, I can just add them in that list. I know Felix talked about this last time, but this is what you're going to get. So just for our purposes today, I'm going to turn everything on except for averaging across our context because I want right and left to be separate again. So I can say OK, then it's going to create that average data node. So now if I graph my knee angles, I've got those. And let's say that I want to compare to walking 2. So if I turn on my knee angles, and then I can drag and drop them. I'm going to go ahead and make a hyperlink. Okay, so we've gone ahead and created our average data. We've set up our report how we would like it to be. So I'm going to save this. And then I'm going to save it as a template. Everything except our average data node, because I want to compare back to the average of walking 2, 4, 6, and 8. So I've got that. We'll go ahead and base this on our compared average template. And then if I want, let's add in walking 1, walking 5, walking 9, and let's do 10. Let's see. Let's throw in, we'll do 6 also. So I've got all my C3Ds in there. The average data, again, is still going to be the original one since that was not a placeholder. So if I populate the comparison graphs, it's just the averages with no comparisons laid onto them. So then if I wanted to look at walking 1 compared to the original average, I can do that. And that's going to have the separate sets. Okay. Again, you're going to use this most often if you're trying to compare, say, a pathological gait with a normative gait database. That's what I see as the most common use of it, but it could be a before and after average of each type of trial, something like that. And just like with any other graph, anything like that, you can still go through and edit if you want to change the colors or the shading, any of those properties in the attributes pane. All right. So now that we know how to create an average template, we want to talk about creating a running template or running average. What this is most commonly used for is as you're building that normative database. Say you're collecting, your goal is 100 trials or 100 good trials between 40 patients for your normative database. And because none of us have the time or recruiting skills to get that in one sitting, sometimes you have to do a running average to build that as you go. And so how you do that is you create a report that includes the average data like we just did, and then you want to add one additional file, or 2 or 3, or however many you've collected that day. So then you're going to go to your data tab and go to your average data, and where it says all trial averages, you'll select your data node in the drop-down list, add over the new files, and then resave it, and it'll update that average data for you. There is a note there. It's important to know that if you've added a trial into your average data and you add it in again, that it will be counted twice. And so the other thing is, if you have the same naming convention for all of your participants, then it can be difficult to keep those straight, but say you have walking 1 for each one. So every time you add in a walking 1, it's going to be counted once, whether it's redundant or not. So unique names are kind of helpful in this situation. So I'm going to go up and pull up our running average. And so right now what I've got is walking 1, 5, 9, 10, and 6, and our average data. These are new trials from the ones that we averaged last time. So I can go to our all trial average, Last time we had 2, 4, 6, 8, and walking. So now I'll add in walking 1, 5, oh, not 6, 9, and 10. If I added in walking 6, again, it would get counted twice since it's already populated in a list. And so that function is available in case you guys want to use like a weighted average if you want one trial to count essentially more than others. But again, for what we're doing today, we're not going to go ahead and use that. So let's say OK. And since I'm already in my average data node, it's actually going to update my average data here. So now, if I were to look at it, you can see that it got just a little bit bigger because I added in a few more trials. Alright, so that's how you would do a running data. Now I've got an average of all those walking trials that I have. So if I was going to come in and add another participant, you would do the same thing. Just open up this report, add in the additional trials, and then go ahead and add them to your all trial average, save it, and it would be updated. Polygon also has an option to run in a presentation mode. You can run reports where you have active hyperlinks and people can go through, read, select on the different links to kind of navigate through the data set, or you can run it as a series of slides. Very, very similar to PowerPoint setup. So how to do that? Once you're in a report, you create a view that you would want to turn into a slide, very similar to creating a global hyperlink. So it could have a combination of text, graphs, a video, anything that you want to display. And then you go to your presentation tab, which is the one on the right, which is the only one that we haven't used thus far. And you just click Create Slide. It'll create a new slide. You'll have to name it, and then it'll pop up in that data bar under the Slides tab. If you want to change the order of slides, say you created left, right, kinematics, kinetics, and then remember that you needed an introduction slide, you can go back, make that. You can either use the Organize Slides button, and it'll give you that pop-up screen, and then you can move them by selecting one, clicking the Move button, and then select the slide that you want it to appear in front of. Again, very similar to Excel, you want it to be before this slide, and it'll appear above the slide that you selected. You can also open up a slide through this Organize pop-up by if you select it, and then in the bottom right you say Jump to, it'll open that slide if you want to make edits at that point. If you don't like the Organize pop-up window, then you can actually click and drag your slides and they will move in order for you. To start a presentation, once you've created slides, you can just click on the slides link in the data bar, and it's automatically going to link you once you select a slide to the presentation tab, since those two go together. So you click on your slide that you want to start on, and then you can just click the Start button. It'll start playing through your slides, so you can use the forward and back buttons to navigate. If you want it to run in a slideshow mode, where the slides take up the entire screen, you can use the F5 button to get rid of all the extra toolbars, and then it'll play like a PowerPoint screen. You'll just use F3 and F4 to go forward and backward. Backward and forward respectively through the slides. There is an advantage of using Polygon to run a presentation over, say, PowerPoint or some other visual editor. You have access to the entire report and the entire data set. And so if you've given a presentation and people have additional questions or additional concerns that you'd like to address, you can always just open up, since you're already in Polygon, open up that data set and say build a couple of extra graphs or something like that to kind of address those issues or prove a point. So if we were going to do this, let's say we want our comparison graphs to be one of our slides, so we can go to our presentation mode, And let's squeak that down a little bit. Presentation, we're going to create a slide. We'll call this our comparison. So I've just created this comparison slide. Now it's listed over here. If I also wanted to have just a welcome slide, I can also make that into a slide. If I want let's see, let's do something exciting. Okay, so now I've got those. I go to my slide. I've got these. Welcome should probably come first. And so if I want to, I can click and drag that up there, or I can go through and say organize. Oh, that was a bad one to choose. Let's do this one. Okay, come here. Move. Insert. There we go. So you've got that option. If you get to where you have a lot of slides, I'm going to suggest this organizational pop-up rather than the click and drag, because you could be like me and just really screw things up. You also have the option to jump to the slides, like I said. So if you just click jump to, it's going to automatically link you to wherever you were on that slide. So to begin our presentation, you can say start. And it is important that you are on. It's best to start from the slide that you would prefer to start your presentation for. So if I start, then you've got the options to go forward through it. So I can advance to knee moments, and then to my comparison to the average knee graphs. You can always back up if you need to prove a point or readdress an issue. Okay, we're going to see, let's see. I'm actually going to turn my toolbars off the long way so I don't accidentally disrupt the call. But you guys will be able to use F5. And then this is F4 to go forward, and F3 to go backward. There we go. Okay. Don't need you. So now that we've got that, that's how you could place your presentation. Obviously, this is very basic. If you guys would like additional advice or anything like that, if you are having problems with getting a presentation to run properly, feel free to give us a call, shoot us an email. This is just kind of to get you going, and then you can, move on from there. But again, it is helpful if I was trying to give a talk and somebody had questions on, say, my knee add and abduction, I can just flip back to my data and actually pull up, additional information if needed, if they wanted to see specifics on the trial, or you've got your key stats options, things like that. The final thing that we're going to cover today is advanced graphs, specifically graphing EMG data. So any analog data can be graphed by either a raw signal, or if it's EMG, you can actually apply an envelope to it, a linear envelope. This is completely a preference thing. You have the option to adjust the settings within Polygon. You can overlay those graphs by dragging and dropping them, either in thumbnails or tabs, just like any other graph. And the envelope parameters, if you'd like to adjust those, are in the File options under Text and Graphs. In general, and just for your guys' information, a wider envelope is going to be more smoothing, whereas a narrower linear envelope is going to be closer to the actual raw signal. So it'll be it appears to be more noisy, but with EMG that's really not the case. So how that looks, and I'm just going to give an upfront apology. You guys will see in just a second, this is not the most obvious EMG data on the planet. So we've got, again, I'm going to expand this. So this one just had cap and quad EMG. So if I wanted to graph left and right, it's got the same options as the other graphs. You can graph all variables. On this one, it's got both. You can graph them individually by going left and then right, or right and then left, apparently. So if you wanted to look at that, you've got them separate. This one really doesn't do a whole lot for me, so I'm just going to dump it. For me, I prefer to look at them side by side. The other option that you have is to right-click and do the enveloped graph. So again, I'll do the envelope, and then the left envelope, so that I can look at those individually. They're backwards, so I'm going to switch them by right-clicking and then just swapping them. And if I wanted to drag them, then I can left-click, drag, and drop. That way I've got my raw signal with the linear envelope overlaid. Again, if I want to do the same thing, I can left-click, drag, and drop. So I've got both of those signals. If I want to go from thumbnails to the tab view to look at them a little closer, you have those options. To adjust the linear envelope settings, you go to File. Mine popped up on my other screen. Let's do this. File, there we go. Options. And then under Text and Graphs, it's going to be in the Filter and Envelope. So you can use those settings. If you are already processing your EMG in some other way, and it's going to already be fit with a linear envelope, then you can use this so that it doesn't try to refit that. Again, those options are available to you if you'd like to use advanced processing for your EMG for the displays. So to review, we talked about the spatial and the temporal parameters of gate and how to graph those in your reports. We talked about automated text and creating that in a template. Then we also discussed creating an average template, comparing a single trial to an average or multiple trials to an average. We discussed creating a running average, how to build that over time. The presentation mode that Polygon can run in that's very similar to PowerPoint, and how to graph EMGs.